Vrinda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate girim Yat kripatamam vande Shri Guru Taranam Parmanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna. So we'll resume our discussion from the 18th verse, 12th chapter, 3rd canto. So this is in the section of the appearance of the Rudras. And we saw that Lord Brahma had first manifested the 5 kinds of avidyas. And then, unhappy with his creation, he manifests the 4 Kumars, which are representation of Vidya. But the 4 Kumars, they did not follow the instructions of the father to have families and create progeny, because they were more inclined to the path of liberation. And angered by the refusal, which Brahma tries to control, but is partially able to only partially successful, the Rudras manifest between in the space between the eyebrows. And in the initial conversation, Lord Brahma, he gives them, so there were 11 Rudras that appear. He gives them the names, he gives them wives, he gives them places to live, and then he gives them the same instructions, that you go forth and multiply, have children and populate the universe, which they were enthusiastically doing so. But the progeny that they were creating were also of the same nature as the Rudras, which were in the predominant mode of passion and ignorance. And driven by that mode, they were increasing in their destructive ability. So in the previous world, Brahma tells Rudra that there's no need for you to generate living entities of this nature. They have begun to devastate everything on all sides with the 5 flames from their eyes, and they've even attacked me. So that brings us to the next verse, 18. Tapatistabhadram te sarvabhuta sukhavaham tapasya vyatha purvam shrishta vishwamidam bhava. My dear son, you have better situate yourself in penance, which is auspicious for all living activities, and which will bring all benediction upon you. By penance only shall you be able to create the universe as before. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva are the 3 deities who are responsible for the creation, maintenance, and the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. So Rudra was advised to abide by his time. So the time that was present was that of creation. And later on, the time would be there of maintenance. But Brahma says inevitably, because it's the nature of material things, they will be destroyed. So he says, abide by your time. And when that time comes, then you should be ready. So how would you be ready? He says by penance only. Now the interesting thing, he says that by penance only shall you be able to create the universe as it was before. So it's a little contradictory to the understanding that that Brahma is instructing them to destroy the universe. So the way it's explained is in two ways essentially. That when Brahma says that you will create the universe as it was before, it means that there is an implicit acknowledgement that only after the destruction of the universe will its recreation happen. So Brahma being an expert in speaking and of noble character, he does not want to give a task that seems to be so negative, that you are basically there to destroy everything I'm creating. So he's saying that because of the service that you will do of destruction, then only the universe can be created as before. According to some acharyas, this is also an acknowledgement of the fact that in certain kalpas, Lord Shiva acts as Brahma and also takes on the responsibility of creating. So in the second canto, 9th chapter, verse 24, Krishna, he identifies himself as one with Lord Shiva. And he says, I create this cosmos by such penance, I maintain it by the same energy, and I withdraw it all by the same energy. Therefore, the potency is penance only. So there is a glorification of penance, which is the recommendation of Brahma to the Rudras, that only by penance you will get the potency. But the verse also indicates the underlying unification, that it is the same Lord Vishnu as Shiva who is destroying, and it is the same Lord Vishnu, or same Lord Krishna rather, as Brahma who is creating. So when Brahma is asking the Rudras to create, then he is also acknowledging of the fact that they're all representatives of Lord Vishnu. So it's the Lord who is creating and the Lord who is destroying. As I mentioned, that this is also a glorification of penance. So the subtle point that is made over here is that the Rudras were full of vibrant energy. They were extremely powerful, but without purpose. What Brahma has given them now is purpose. And the purpose is service. That now they have a service to execute for the pleasure of the Lord. And because of that, their same propensity becomes glorious. So this is essentially the secret of bhakti. That one uses whatever potency they have, good in a material perspective, maybe good or bad, but whatever they have, they use it in the service of Krishna. And then it becomes glorious there. So there is a song by Narottam Das Thakur in Prem Bhakti Chandrika, where he sings about this purpose. He says that lust I will engage in offering the fruits of my work to Krishna. So this is lust in terms of wanting to enjoy the fruits of your activity. Then he says, anger I will direct towards the enemies of the devotees. Greed I will engage, being greedy, to hear the topics of Lord Hari in the association of the saintly devotees. Bewilderment will be manifested because I cannot immediately attain my worshipable Lord. Madness will appear when I madly glorify Lord Krishna's transcendental attributes. In this way, I will engage each of these in the Lord's service. Okay, so this is a nice and a sweet verse for devotees. Verse 19. Tapaseva param jyote bhagwantam madokshajam sarvabhuta guhavasam agyasvindate puma. By penance only can one even approach the personality of Godhead, who is within the heart of every living entity, and at the same time beyond the reach of all senses. So Prabhupada mentions that Brahma is advising the Rudras to perform penances, and when they perform it, their followers, their sons and their descendants will also follow penance to attain the favor of the Lord. And this is an example of as leaders do, others will follow. So Prabhupada said, thus Brahma, disgusted with the Rudra generations and afraid of being devoured by the increase of population, asked Rudra to stop producing such an unwanted generation and take to penance for attaining the favor of the Supreme Lord. And Brahma does this expertly. That he does not condemn them. He glorifies their prowess. He uses the prowess that they have in the service of the Lord. And then he encourages them to prepare for that service in a way that they are not disruptive to others. So this is the glory of Brahma's expertise. Verse 20. Maitruvacha evam atma bhuvadishtha parikramya giran patim bhadam mityamuma mantriya viveshatapa Sri Maitreya said, thus Rudra, having been ordered by Brahma, circumambulated his father, the master of the Vedas. Addressing him with words of assent, he entered the forest to perform austere penances. So it's important to note the deference to the order of Guru, to the order of authority and scripture. And then also the inclination to perform austerities and control the senses. Because if the Rudras were factually running wild, then why would they have addressed or accepted the instructions of Brahma? And if they did not have the ability to control the fierce anger and passion in them, they would not have taken to the process of austerity. So from this we can understand that the Rudras cannot be said to be in the mode of ignorance. This is not the characteristics of a person who is in the mode of ignorance. Okay, next verse, 21. Atha abhadyata sargam dashaputra prajagyare bhagvachakti yuktasya lokasana lokasantana hetavaha. Brahma, who was empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thought of generating living entities and begot 10 sons for the extension of the generations. So we'll see that in 7 verses from 21 to 27, the various manifestations from the body and the mind of Lord Brahma will be described. And essentially, this is the principle of having a family. Prabhupada says that by the mercy of the Lord and for the service of the Lord. Verse 22. Marichiratya angirasau pulastya pulaha kritau Brigor Vashishto Dakshascha Dashamsastatra Naradaha. Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, Krato, Brigu, Vashisht, Daksh, and the 10th son Narad were thus born. So Prabhupada says that without bhakti, one cannot make progress in any department of activities. Which is why Narad is mentioned separately. Because bhakti is not dependent on anything else, but everything else is dependent on bhakti. So the other 9 sons beginning from Marichi are essentially representatives of Karma Yoga. And karma, in addition to Gyan and Vairagya and Tap and Astang, only when there is a component of bhakti in the performance will they be successful, even in achieving their material objects. And Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Narad is represented at the end because all these activities end in bhakti. And also bhakti is supremely independent. Okay, next verse. Verse 23. Utsangana jajne daksho nuga shatad swayam bhavu pranadve shishtha sanjato briguz tvachi karat kratuhu. Narad was born from the deliberation of Brahma, which is the best part of the body. Vashisht was born from his breathing, Daksh from a thumb, Bhrigu from his touch, and Kratu from his hand. So Utsangat actually means the place of deliberation. So Narad was born from the best place of Brahma, which is the ability to introspect. This is what sets the humans apart from the different species of existence, that they're able to introspect. So you'll never see a lion sitting and thinking that, am I doing a good job? Where's my life taking me? Am I happy? They simply live in the moment. And this indicates that bhakti is the most superior endowment of the human. It also means that devotion and introspection are very closely interlinked. So we have the famous sutra from the Vedanta Sutra, Tato Brahma Jigyasa. And now let us inquire into the nature of the absolute. So that is an invitation to introspect. That think about something more than what you are empirically observing. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Utsangat also means from the lap, the place of affection, which again points to the sweetness of bhakti. It also means from the association with great devotees. So in addition to this, Maitreya says, Apo Nara iti prokta. So, well, I'm sorry, Maitreya doesn't say, but in the commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti says that it is also said, Apo Nara iti prokta. So, Nara means water, the offsprings of the Lord. So, from this, it could be understood that Nar refers to the Supreme Lord, and Nar, the A being long, refers to that which belongs to the Lord. And the means one who can deliver. So he's analyzing the word Narad. So Narad means he who can give bhakti. Essentially, it means he who can deliver. But the understanding contextually is that he who can deliver one to Nar. So the word Narad means one who can give bhakti. Okay, verse 24. Pulauna bhito jajne pulastya karnayo rishihi angira mukhato kshnotrir marichir manaso bhava. Pulastya was generated from the ears, Angira from the mouth, Atri from the eyes, Marichi from the mind, and Pulaha from the navel of Brahma. Next verse. Dharmastanad dakshinato yatra narayanaha swayam adharma prathastato yasman mrityurloka bhayankaraha. Religion was manifested from the breast of Brahma, wherein is seated the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. And irreligion appeared from his back, where horrible death takes place for the living entity. So Prabhupada comments that all types of irreligion, they spring from the back of Brahma, whereas real religion the bhakti is generated from the chest. So what is special about the chest? Because it is also the seat of Paramatma. And from there, one is inspired to follow the path of devotional service. And anything that does not lead to bhakti is irreligion. So Srila Prabhupada is giving the absolute definition. He's even condemning activities like karma kand, gyan kand, anything he says that does not lead to devotional service is irreligion. And conversely, anything which leads to devotional service is called religion. Okay, I'll do one more verse, maybe two more verses, and then we can stop for discussion. Hidi kamo bruvah krodho lobhascha dradashada asayadvak sindhavo medra nirti payo raghashrayah. Lust and desire became manifested from the heart of Brahma. Anger from between his eyebrows. Greed from between his lips. The power of speaking from his mouth. The ocean from his penis. And low and abominable activities from his anus. Source of all sins. So this verse describes the various factors that instigate adharma. Previous verse talked about religion and irreligion. This talks about irreligion. So because the mind has an independent nature, it is impossible to uproot the lust that is situated over there. So the mind over here is used synonymously with Hrithi. It is referring to not just the analyzing mind, but the feeling mind. That is also considered to be the heart. And it says that that even though lust may originate in the mind, they manifest between the they manifest in other places. So it says anger from between the eyebrows and greed from the lips. So all this is a manifestation of lust. So the humans, they possess these qualities that are conducive to adharma, but they have still hope because they produce qualities that are conducive to bhakti. So the power of speaking is mentioned over here as adharmic. But then the same power of speaking can be used to manifest the Vedas and to engage in Krishna Katha. So everything that is mentioned over here can also be directed to the service of Krishna. And we discussed that in the manifestation of the Rudras. Because if that was not possible, then there would be no hope. If these things are intrinsically related and there is no opportunity to modify them, then one would simply be acting on according to their acquired swabha. Okay, I'll do one more verse and then we can stop. Chhayayaha kardamo jajne devahutipatihi prabhuhu manaso dehataschedam jajne vishvakrita jagat. Sage Kardamba, the husband of the great Devahuti, was manifested from the shadow of Brahma. Thus, all became manifested from either the body or the mind of Brahma. So the previous verse was talking about Rajas and Tamas. And this verse shows that even in Rajas and Tamas, Sattva can manifest. So it talks about about uh, uh, Kardam, and he specially calls him out as the husband of the great Devahuti. He does not talk about the consort or the wives of the other entities, because this will lead into the subsequent part of the discourse, where we see that the son of Kardam and Devahuti is the incarnation of the Lord Kapil, in form of Kapil, who will speak Sankhya in the later chapters in this very canto. So Prabhupada says that Kardam was born in the mode of goodness, and Narad was born in the transcendental state of Brahma. Okay, let me pause here and see if there's any discussion.
Prabhu, so I just wanted to confirm one thing. You said that the Rudras are not in mode of ignorance because they were capable of doing penance. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So three things. They were submissive to the orders of authority. They were able to control their nature, and they were obviously inclined to or able to execute penance. So these qualities are not of those who are in tamas. Opposite qualities are there for the tamas. Okay, so we'll move on to the next verse, 28. Vachanduhetaram tanvim swayambhur manaha akamam chakamekshataha sakamiti naha shrutam. O Vidur, we have heard that Brahma had a daughter named Vak, who was born from his body and who attracted his mind towards sex, although she was not sexually inclined towards him. So in 6 verses from 28 to 33, the Vak episode is discussed. So Brahma created a daughter, Vak, who was considered to be speech, but then fell under the influence of ignorance and became inappropriately attracted to her for obvious reasons, that she is his daughter. So the sages headed by Marichi, they respectfully brought to Brahma's attention that his action would cause disturbance to religious principles. And Brahma, he immediately resisted. I'm just summarizing what will be said later on. So, and he felt ashamed for what he did. Because of that shame, he renounced his body. Mentally, he didn't give up his body, but he renounced. So when we say renounce his body, we say renounce his mentality, which appeared as the fog. So it's interesting to note that that even during Brahma's creation, which was the result of in which he prepared, right? We saw that he performed so many years of austerities. He surrendered to Krishna. He got benedictions from Krishna that you will be able to create. He said that let not pride overcome me. And Krishna said that I will give you a magic formula that whatever you do, you think of me and pride will never overcome. But then we see these impediments coming here. That his firstborn sons, they refuse to follow his orders. Then out of anger, Rudra is created. And the Rudras are getting ready to destroy the universe even before it is fully created. And now we see that Brahma himself is getting contaminated, which is probably the biggest impediment. Because obstacles outside can be conquered, but obstacles within are difficult to conquer. So the lesson over here is that Brahma is still able to overcome all these obstacles. When Krishna gives his benediction, it does not mean that the person has to throw up their hands and wait for the smooth ride to happen. So similar to the pastime with Arjun, the Krishna in the 11th chapter tells Arjun clearly that Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Jayadratha, and the other kings I have already killed. Nimit Matra, you just become my instrument. But after that, we see Arjun striving so hard. When he was trying to kill Jayadratha, he was almost at a point where he was ready to give up his body. So the glory that we have is the endeavor that we make in Krishna's service. So each one of us have the same benediction from Krishna, that he guarantees our journey back to Godhead. He's guaranteeing us a place in the spiritual world because that's where we initially came. That place is still empty. That seat is not taken by anybody else. Nobody else can take that seat. So we have a guaranteed place in the spiritual world. Krishna is guaranteeing our entrance back there. But we have to endeavor to gain that guarantee. We also see that the mood in which Maitreya speaks. So he speaks very carefully, saying that we have heard. So in order to avoid any offenses at the lotus feet of a great Vaishnava like Brahma. So what he's saying is that when he says we have heard, he's saying that though this should not be spoken, just in order to give knowledge, I speak. And I speak without finding any faults. So because that occurred, there is a lesson in it for us. And Maitreya is saying, so I speak what I have heard. Not to offend. So his fear is that he may fall down like the Sadgarbhas. So you may know the pastime of the Sadgarbhas, who are the 6 sons of Marichi, great sages. And when they witnessed this Vak episode, then they became very contemptuous of Lord Brahma. They started laughing at him derisively. And because of that, they went through so many trials and tribulations that because of that offense, they were condemned and they took birth as demons in the lineage of Hiranyakashipu. So they were born as the son of the Kalnemi demon, who is either a son or a grandson of Hiranyakashipu. And when they were born, because they still had their inclination, so they were performing severe austerities. And when Hiranyakashipu found out about it, he became very angry and he said that I am the Lord. Why do you have to perform austerities? And because of this, you don't understand the position of your superiors. He cursed them that you'll be killed by your own father. So these are the Sadgarbhas who took birth from Devaki. the 6 sons of Devaki, and Kalnemi demon took birth as Kamsa. And Kamsa killed the Satgarbhas. And when they were killed because of the influence of the curse, they fell down to the hellish planets. They were in Sutalok. And only when Devaki, she prayed to Krishna that my 6 sons were killed and I wasn't even able to breastfeed them. So Krishna goes to Sutal, he gives darshan to Bali Maharaj, and he gets the Sadgarbhas. And when they drink the milk of Devaki, because Krishna had also honored that, then they get freed from the curse. So this is how insidious Vaishnava Aparadha is, even if the person is committing an act that may be considered to be offensive. Vishwanath Chakravarti also mentions that the phrasing used by Maitreya, we have heard, indicates that nobody has seen this happen in the present kalpa. So rather it happened in some previous distant kalpa, and it is now being explained for learnings. And he says that it cannot be accepted that in the present kalpa, after hearing the Chaturshloki and receiving so many benedictions from the Lord himself, that Brahma would act in such a way. Jiva Goswami in Krama Sandarbha, he states that the attraction to Vak has a terrible meaning for those interested in the Vedas. So Vak is as speech. So it is an example that anyone, regardless of their standing, should be corrected if they disrespect the Vedas. So Vak, Jiva Goswami is saying Vak represents the Vedas. Brahma, lusting after Vak, represents the disrespect of the Vedas. And Marichi and the others asking him to rectify his behavior is the indication that anybody who disrespects the Vedas should be corrected. And Prabhupada makes this point that the senses are so mad and strong that they can bewilder even the most sensible and learned man. Therefore, it is advised that one should not indulge in living alone, even with one's mother, sister, or daughter. So we see that in Chaitanya Leela. We see that in Prabhupada's own pastime, that once Pishima, his sister, was sitting and talking to him, and there was a disciple who was there, and she got up and wanted to leave them to talk alone, and Prabhupada chastised her and said, "You stay over here, don't go." And even though Prabhupada was in his late 70s and his sister very, very old, but Prabhupada was just demonstrating that it is the nature of the senses are so that they can drag anybody anywhere else. If it can happen to Brahma, it can definitely happen to anybody else. Verse 29. Tammadharma krita matim vilokya pitram sutaha marichi mukhya munayo vishrambad pradya bodhyam. Thus, finding the father so deluded in an act of immorality, the sages headed by Marichi, all sons of Brahma, spoke as follows with great respect. So the word Vishrambhat means that they spoke without any condemnation directed to Brahma. It also means that they spoke with affection, which means that they did not become envious or contemptuous. So they still retained their affection. And then Vishramad also means faith. That what was their faith? The act was done to demonstrate a lesson and did not represent a personal loss of morality. So the word Vishrambhat indicates the nature of how a devotee deals with the so-called fall down of another devotee. It also indicates that there was no offense to Marichi and others speaking to their father, because their mood was Vishrambha, as opposed to the Sadgarbhas. They had a different mood. So Marichi and the others also went to correct their father, but Vishrambha, they went with great respect, out of lot of affection, and with deep faith. So that's why Prabhupada says that the sages like Marichi were not wrong in submitting the protests against the acts of the great father. He says that it might be that Brahma wanted to warn his subordinates about the human frailties in their dealings with women. And this statement actually becomes very relevant when we do the 14th chapter, when we see the interaction between Kashyap and Diti. Verse 30. Naitat purve kritam tvade na karishanti chapare yastvam duhitam gacche anigriha gajam prabhu. O Father, this performance in which you are endeavoring to complicate yourself was never attempted by any other Brahma, nor by anyone else, nor by you in previous kalpas, nor will anyone dare to attempt it in the future. You are the supreme being in the universe. So how is it that you want to have sex with your daughter and cannot control your desires? So when it is said previous kalpas, it is predicated of the time that the conversation was done. So it does not mean that from the present kalpa, so the incident is a recitation of something happened in the past, and what is being spoken in the past is further past, that it never happened in the past, and also it was never attempted by any other Brahma, which means that not only in this universe, but in other universes also. Verse 31. Tejiyasam api hayetan nashushlokayam jagat guru yadvritam anutishtan vai lokakshemaya kalpate. Even though you are the most powerful being, this act does not suit you because your character is followed by spiritual improvement, by people in general. So there is both respect for Brahma and a request for Brahma. So the respect is that you're powerful. So you may be, so it's said that personalities who are extraordinarily powerful, they are not affected by mundane activities that may bewilder other people. So like Lord Shiva may drink the poison and nothing happens to him. Krishna may dance with hundreds and thousands of women and nothing happens to him. His equilibrium is always maintained. So they're glorifying Brahma. That you're so powerful that this act may not affect you. But others who follow you will be destroyed. They will say that if Brahma could do it, then it is okay for us also to do it. So Prabhupada gives the example of how the sun evaporates water from filthy places and yet is not infected with the quality of the filth. Similarly, Brahma remains unimpeachable in all conditions. But still, since he is the spiritual master of all living entities, his behavior and character should be ideal, that people will follow such sublime behavior and derive the highest spiritual benefit. Verse 32. Tasmai namo bhagavate ya idam svena rochasha atmastham vyanjayam asha sadharman patum arhati. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who by his own effulgence, while situated in himself, has manifested this cosmos. May he also protect religion for all goodness. So Prabhupada writes that apparently, even after all this counsel and prayers that were given to Brahma by his sons headed by Marichi, Brahma could not be dissuaded from his determination to pursue his daughter for sexual intercourse. So the great sons, they then began to pray to a higher authority. And Brahma being Brahma, the highest authority in the material universe, they now begin to pray to Krishna. And this also means that it is ultimately by the mercy of Krishna that anybody can control these powerful urges. They're so powerful that so there are some acharyas who try to draw some symbolism from it. So Marichi appeared from the mind of Brahma, and here we see that even though the mind is asking to desist, the impulse is so strong that it is unable to do so. And this is something that conditioned souls like us have so much of experience with, anecdotal, empirical experience within us and around us, that our mind tells us that this is not the right thing to do, but we do it. And we see others around us also do. So then what's the solution? This is the solution, that the same mind that was instructing, well, instructing is not the right word, but was counseling Brahma to refrain, is now taking shelter of the personality of Godhead. Verse 33. Sa itam granata putra purodrish prajapatim prajapati patistanvam tatyaj vridetastada tam disho jagrur goram niharanya vidustamaha. the father of all Prajapatis, Brahma, thus seeing all his Prajapati's sons speaking in that way, became very much ashamed and at once gave up the body he had accepted. Later, that body appeared in all directions as the dangerous fog in darkness. So Prabhupada says that the remedy of a sin as great as this is death. And the sin over here is wanting to, is incest. So the only compensation for such sin is giving up the body. However, it is not possible for Brahma to die. Why? Because he has been allotted a lifespan of Dviprara, given a service to Krishna. So what does he do? So for him, dying means that he gives up that disposition. He gives up that nature. And what is the influence of the disposition that he discards? It is said that all the directions are always covered with darkness because of this. So the natural nature of directions is them being dark. Unless there is sun to drive away the darkness, their natural state is darkness because of the influence of the body of Brahma being given up. Prabhupada says that ignorance is the cause of sinful life, or sinful life is the cause of gross ignorance. So this is the cycle that happens. So in Nectar of Devotion, this is mentioned how avidya through kuta, bija, prarabdha, and then again it becomes bija. So by sinful activities, sinful desires come and they feed into the root cause of avidya. And then he says, one who takes shelter of the Lord, the perpetual light, then he has no fear of being annihilated by the darkness of ignorance. So this is the result of Marichi and the other sons praying to the Lord. So they initially prayed to Brahma, but it apparently did not dissuade him. And then they prayed to Krishna. And because of the influence of Krishna, who is light, Brahma became ashamed, and he gave up that disposition. So this ends the Vak episode, and I can pause here and to see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Here we can see that Brahma has not done any act, but he has just, it wasn't only in the mind, okay? But he gave up his body in a way.
Yes, I think for him to even think about it, in other places it is said that he actually pursued. So Vak took the form of a deer, and in order to escape a father, he was traveling all over the universe. And Brahma took the form of a stag, a male deer, and was pursuing her. But yes, there is no indication that the sinful act was committed. But for Brahma to think about it was so troublesome.
And Prabhupada wrote in the Bible, the best way to compensate for one sinful act is to give up one's body at once.
He's essentially quoting Mahaprabhu in the Chota Haridas Thakur. episode there.
Well, Prabhu, I think even, I don't know the context, even there was one disciple of Srila Prabhupada, when they went to Vrindavan, I think he gave up his life in the Yamuna, something like that.
So he gave up his body in Prayag. It's a little controversial, so
Oh,
I
yeah?
don't want to discuss it, at least on this forum.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions, thoughts?
Just a thought, Prabhu. This Apichet Suduracharo, I was, I heard from Shrorampat Swami that he had quoted previous acharyas where it is said that that devotee who sees another devotee commit an offense, but yet they don't find fault with him, they are immediately restored. Their devotional service is immediately restored. I think I might be slightly saying it a little differently than what Maharaj did, but essentially what I understood is, yes, that when somebody's determination is right, they come back to the path of devotional service, but also the other devotee who is an observer, when their consciousness does not shift to when it is not fault finding, they are also reinstated in that devotional service. And for me, I was thinking, when Marichi was still able to speak to his father respectfully with love and all of that affection and everything that you mentioned, it somehow reminded me of this Bhagavad Gita discussion that I had heard. I thought I'll share that.
Thank you for sharing. And it makes sense because just as dangerous Vaishnava Prabh is, same thing is the potency of Vaishnava Seva. So it's a two-edged kind of thing. At one edge can cut really badly, and the other end can heal very powerfully. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so we'll move on to the next verse, 34. Kadachidhyayatah shrastu Veda samas chaturmukhat Katham srakshamyaham lokan samvetan yatha pura. Once upon a time, when Brahma was thinking how to create the worlds, as in the past millennium, the four Vedas, which contain all varieties of knowledge, manifested from his four mouths. So now the time scale has shifted. So Maitreya says Kadachit, that now we are not talking about past distant kalpa that we have heard of, back to the current. So Brahma is there, and now he is looking to further the process of creation. And then in 16 verses from 34 to 49, further creation is described. So one question that might arise here is that why is the sequencing done in this way? That after speaking the Vak episode, Maitreya is describing the glorious acts of Brahma, and Srila Prabhupada he gives this explanation that the example shown by Brahma only suggests that the power of material nature is so strong that it can act upon everyone, even Brahma. Brahma was saved by the mercy of the Lord with a little punishment. But by the grace of the Lord, he did not lose his prestige as the great Brahma. So it glorifies Brahma's shelter. So Brahma did something because of which he should have been disqualified from the service that he got. But his shelter is so powerful that Prabhupada said with just a little token. Token was him giving up his mentality. He is now able to resume his service. There are two verses. So these are so many times when we read, we see a lot of dire warnings. Don't do this, don't do that. You'll become an animal, you'll go to tamasi hell. This will happen. But there's also a lot of there's always also a lot of reassurances. And this is one of those cases where the devotees are reassured. It's like Varshana was talking about. Apiche Sudurachara Bhajate Mavanantama. That's Krishna giving reassurances. So there are two verses that are quoted from the Bhagavatam. One is from the 11th canto, 5th chapter, 42. That any person who is engaged 100% in the transcendental loving service of the Lord at his lotus feet is very dear to the personality of Godhead Hari. And the Lord, being situated in the heart of the devotee, excuses all kinds of sins committed by chance. And the second verse is 10th canto, chapter 33, verse 29. That the status of powerful controllers is not harmed by apparently audacious transgressions of morality we may see in them, for they are just like fire, which devours everything fed into them and remains unpolluted. So one verse glorifies Brahma as a great personality, and the other verse glorifies his shelter. Verse 35. So after this, it's a lot of what I say is informational verses. I've also compiled this in a table, so you should have that in the document that Prem Kishore Prabhu shared. Verse 35. Chaturhotram karma tantram upaveda nyahi saha dharmasya padas chatvaras tathevashram vrityaha. The four kinds of paraphernalia for conducting the fire sacrifice became manifest. The performer, the chanter, the offerer, the fire, and the action performed in terms of the supplementary Vedas. All the four principles of religiosity, truth, austerity, mercy, and cleanliness, and the duties in the four social orders became manifest. And Prabhupada mentions that it's the performance of these religious activities according to one's varna and ashram that makes a human being a human being. Otherwise, they are like animals. And then he says it's clearly mentioned that the Vedic literatures were generated by his four mouths. So the duty of the humankind is to follow the principles of the Vedas and thus be called as an Aryan. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, Krishna chastises Arjuna as Anaryan Justa. And how are you behaving? As one who does not know the meaning of Vedas. So an Aryan is one who knows and follows the Vedas. Verse 36. Vidurvacha Savai Vishvasrajamisho Vedadin Mukhato Srajat Yadyadhyena Srajat Devas Panme Bruhitapodhana. Vidur said, O great sage, whose only wealth is penance, kindly explain to me how and with whose help Brahma established the Vedic knowledge which emanated from his mouth. Next verse. Maitrevacha Rigyaju Sam Atharvakyam Vedan Purvadibir Mukha Shastramejyam Stuti Stomam Prayaschitam Yadadat Karma. Maitreya said, beginning from the front face of Brahma, gradually the four Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sam and Atharva, became manifest. Thereafter, Vedic hymns, which had not been pronounced before, priestly rituals, the subject matter of the recitation, and transcendental activities were all established one after another. So this is talking about the four kinds of activities that are done following the four kinds of Vedas, mostly as part of Karma Kand. So the Hota is the Shastra, which is the Rig Veda. This is the chanting of the mantras without singing them, without intonation. It's the chanting of the mantras. Then the Advaryo is Ijya manifested from Advayo, which is deity worship. Here it's called sacrificial performances. And these follow the Yajur Veda. And the Udgat is the one who chants with intonation. So they sing the verses, it's Stuti Stoma. And they follow the Sam Veda. And then the Brahma, he follows the Atharva Veda. So he is the presiding priest and he corrects the errors by the Hota, Advaryu and the Udgat. And the Atharva Veda also has a lot of mystical chants which is later on it was misclassified as black magic, but it has a lot of mystical chants to protect the yagyas from evil influences, from Brahma Rakshasas. And because it said that when a yagya is done, then the Brahma Rakshas, they all stand there and observe. And if there is any truti, then they attack in a subtle form. They take away all the benefits of the Vedas. They enter the body of the performers or the benefactor of the Vedas. So the Brahma, who is the priest, he's taking all these measures. He's chanting the mantras to protect against the Brahma Rakshas. He's correcting any remedial measures. That's all in the Atharva Veda. Verse 38. Ayurvedam dhanurvedam gandharvam vedamatmanaha stapatyam cha shrajat vedam kramat purvadibir mukhahe. He also created the medical science, military art, musical art, and the architectural science, all from the Vedas. They all emanated one after another, beginning from the front face. So these are the Upavedas, that which follow the Vedas. They mostly deal with material things. And but Prabhupada makes this point that and that everything is there in the scripture, everything that is needed for the human society to make spiritual progress or to make material progress. Everything is there in the scriptures. The science of construction, of singing and dancing, the art of creating your armies in different formations. They are all there. So even though the main topic of the Vedas is spiritual, but understanding that it is dealing with people living in a material realm, the Vedas extend that and give them guidance in all in all respects. Verse 29. Itihas Puranani Panchamam Vedaishvaraha Sarvebhya eva vaktrebhya Sasraja Sarvadarshanaha. Then he created the fifth Veda, the Puranas, and the histories, all from all his mouths, since he could see all the past, present, and futures. So Prabhupada says that these are the histories of particular countries and nations of the world. No, there are histories, but the Puranas are the histories of the entire universe, not only in one kalpa, but spread across several kalpas. And the reason Brahma could manifest them, because he was Trikalagya, because he could see all of time. So while the Vedas, they emanated from different mouths of Brahma, the Puranas, they emanated from all the mouths, because the Puranas, they embody all the Vedas. So Jiva Goswami in Tattva Sandarbha, he goes first to make this point that why is Bhagavatam a basis for one to take shelter? And this is one of the verses that he uses, that the fact that the Puranas manifested along with the Vedas means that they are the same as the Vedas. Because especially the Smat Brahmans, they reject the Itihas and the Puranas. They say that they're meant for the less intelligent people who cannot understand the Vedas. And they're basically they're stories. They're factual stories, but they're just stories for those who cannot grasp the nyaya, the logic of the Vedas. And Jiva Goswami says, actually, no. All the Vedas are manifest in the Puranas. And the fact that the Puranas came at the same time as the Vedas did, from the same source as Brahma, means that they have the same position. And here it is specifically said Panchamam Vedam. So this point is specifically made that it is the fifth Veda. Verse 40. Shodasya uktau purva bhaktra purushya agnis tutavatha aptorya matiratraucha vajepyam sagosavam. All the different varieties of fire sacrifice. Shodashi uktva, purushi, agnistoma, aptoryama, atiratra, vajpeya, and gosava became manifested from the eastern mouth of Brahma. So this verse manifests the different various sacrifices that were mentioned in verse 35, Karma Tantra. And Purushi means the preparation of fire. So everything in the sacrifice that is done is an elaborate step. So Purushi is preparation of the fire, because the Vedic fire is not lit by matches or flint. It is lit by the recitation of mantras. And Agnistut is Agnistova. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that these two, Purushi and Agnistut, they appear from Brahma's southern mouth. And the other two, they came from the other two mouths. Okay, so I'll do a couple of more verses and then we'll stop for any discussion. Vidyadanam tapaha satyam dharmasya tipadani cha ashramamscha yatha sankhyaam ashrajat sahavrittibihi. Education, charity, penance, and truth are said to be the four legs of religion. And to learn this, there are four orders of life with different classification of castes according to vocation. Brahma created all this in systematic order. So purity, according to the Yajnavalkya Smriti, it says that, so this is talking about the four legs of religion. And what is it talking about? Vidya Danam Tapa Satyam. Education, charity, penance, and Satyam, truth. So Vidya is the same as purity. So generally we say purity, mercy, austerity, and truthfulness. So here it says Vidya Danam Tapa Satyam. So it's explained that Vidya, according to the Yajnavalkya Smriti, means that from the knowledge of the Supreme Lord arises the highest purity of the jiva. Therefore, knowledge can be equated to purity. Also, from the knowledge of what to do and what not to do comes saucham. That if you know what needs to be done and you do it, that is purity. Then dhanam, charity, is equated to mercy, and that's a more easy to follow. That one who gives in charity is automatically demonstrating a quality of mercy. And in charity, the glorification is that those who give dravyadan, so those who give in charity, they do not achieve 1/16th of the results of the person who gives in charity abhay, who does abhay dan. So abhay dan is the highest form of charity. And it goes to say that, so one can only become fearless when one knows one's relationship with the lotus feet of the Lord. So therefore, in 117.24 of the Bhagavatam, Tapasvacham and Daya Satyamati, that it's mentioned that in Satyug the four elements of dharma were mentioned. So here we can understand that they are corresponding to the same thing. And Prabhupada maps it to the various ashrams. So he says that student life is meant for acquiring the best education. So this is Vidya, which is equated to Saucham, purity. Student life to purity. And then household life is meant for gratifying the senses, provided it is performed with a charitable disposition of mind, which is daya or mercy. So the Grastha ashram is dependent on mercy. Then retirement from household life is meant for penance. So this is the Vanaprastha ashram, where tapa or austerity is there. And then renounced life is meant for preaching the absolute truth. So this is satya or truth, which is truthfulness. So brahmacharya is purity, grahastha is mercy, vanaprastha is austerity, and sannyasi is truthfulness. So generally these four are mentioned in context of the yugas, that how after each yuga one quality goes away. Here we see them mapped to the various varnas. So I'm going to stop over here. We have a couple of minutes. If anybody has any discussion points?
Hare Krishna. Just going back to the Lord Brahma Vak incident, I see in the purport here to text 33, in the text and purport, where Prabhupada says, and this was the gist of the discussion also, that the best way to compensate for one's sinful acts is to give up one's body at once. But then I have this little book here that you make commentary, sometime from, and I see there's a note here to that text to the Jew, which said that the status of exalted personality is not contaminated by apparently audacious transgression of morality. Brahma's power of creation did not diminish due to his distraction because of Vak. And there's in the verse itself where this little linked commentary is made, it said that hearing his Prajapati son's Brahma was ashamed of his act and give up his body, and then in brackets it has mentality. So I was just wondering if it's Brahma give up that, let's say, contaminated mentality, or he give up his body proper. I'm just wondering, just trying to decipher all this.
So that's the understanding. So I had mentioned that it was not possible for Brahma to die because he has been allocated a life of the Dvip Prarabdha. He's been given the service. So so what does he do? So he gives up that. He gives up that contaminated disposition. And the point that you were making, that Brahma being a great personality was not impacted. So the reason that is given here is that why was he not impacted? Because he was able to take shelter of Krishna. It's not that just because he was a great, so his greatness comes transitively from Krishna. It's not that because he was great, he gets a pass to do whatever he likes. But if you notice in the flow of the verses, that only after the sages say that let us take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that Brahma, then he gives up this disposition. And in the underlying purport, it is explained that it is at this point that by the mercy of the Lord, Brahma realized his mistake. Prabhupada writes in the purport that even though the children were asking him not to pursue his daughter, but he was still keen to do it. And that's the power of lust. But when they took shelter of the Lord, then the understanding is that Brahma also took shelter of the Lord. And then he was quickly able to give up that mentality and continue with the service.
All right. One other quick comment. The incident that was mentioned with that devotee who gave his body up in the Ganga someplace. That devotee's name was Vishnu Jan Swami. And after that incident, Prabhupada was very, very disturbed, if that's a too strong word. And then it was then that he made that ruling, so to speak, in ISKCON, that if a sannyasi has, that kind of difficulty, then he could take to the Grihastha ashram and continue his service. But I'm just trying to reflect on what we were just discussing here, was that probably, it was a misunderstanding of the instruction or that particular incident with Chota Haridas, that devotee Vishnujan, who was loved so much by Srila Prabhupada, instead of giving up his body physically, just remorse and rectify, oneself, right? Because
yeah. It wasn't even an instruction to him. He heard it in a conversation. So somebody asked Prabhupada that what happens if a sannyasi, and this was not even a Guhyam conversation. It was more of a conversation that was held in a semi-public environment. What happens if a sannyasi is attracted? And then Prabhupada said, well, he has no recourse. He has to give up his body. And Vishnujan Swami happened to be hearing. And he did not seek any further rectification. I think he was just overcome with remorse. But if you read the Shikshamrita, there are so many letters written to Prabhupada by people having challenges, and Prabhupada being so compassionate to them.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, so if there isn't any more discussion, we'll stop here. Thank you. Vanchakalpatarubhayaschit kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanand.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you.
Hari Bol.